Good morning and welcome to another stream. This time not part of the Agile Buzzwords Demystified series, but really about why do we, people, the world, why do we use Agile methods? Why can't we simply do our work and just move along? And I think the answer is long, and I haven't made any notes up front. I have thought about it. It is basically part of a thinking process over the weekend. What am I going to stream next? And I thought this topic is maybe interesting because this is where it all starts. The conscious decision to use agile methods, starting with the terminology, introducing it into a company, and ruffle feathers for people who don't want to change anything at all, or for whatever reason don't think it's going to work, or is a good idea, or to focus on it, or you can't use it for everything. So whatever it is causing tension. Why do we do it then? I mean, there must be a good reason for doing it. And this stream here is going to be about this particular thing. If you don't know me, my name is Dennis. I'm an Agile coach since a bit and very much into Agile, applying Agile methods since roughly the last 12 years in my working life, seeing how other teams are doing it, implementing it myself, making changes as a Scrum Master, but also being part of the management on the other hand, who's then seeing how things are going as an sort of outsider to an IT team, but still being sort of in the lead. So various thoughts, various experiences made, and yeah, right now we're running through DevOps transformation, so there's even more thoughts behind it and experiences. The personal birth for proper agile methods was when we thought about our first project in 2010-ish, where we said, okay, here we are coming up with a plan how to do something, and in order to come up with a good plan, we need a good specification. And the specification was, I can't remember, maybe 250, 300 pages long. And after this was created, and that was basically a milestone within the project, so a certain amount of people was working a certain amount of time on creating this documentation. And this first milestone was deemed to be important, and it was measured whether it was on time, whether it was on budget, and all these things. And of course, as you can imagine, there were people involved who are paid for doing this kind of job, so not paid in the sense of like an internal employee, but more an external, so famous company consultancy names were in the ring, and of course they achieved this target, because they're perfect, or and very expensive, or because it's very simple to write documentation. To 150 pages is still, I'm not saying it is a piecemeal, but at the end of the day, it is, what does it prove? When you achieve in a project the first gate, the first milestone, and this is the documentation, and it is on time, does it give you any indication how punctual the rest of the project is going to conclude? You have a timeline. You have an ideal timeline. These two things are maybe overlapping to 100% until the point in time the documentation has been created. But what happens after is completely new territory. And this is how it went for our project. They had a few attempts before doing this very project, and these projects always failed. And also this particular part now, which now came in our world, was deemed to take maybe 2.5 years, and it took then way longer. And this was maybe foreseeable after being 6 months into the game. But nevertheless, nothing you could foresee after the first quality gate was hit. And so there are two major lessons already learned. So on the one hand, you can't extrapolate a performance in a project where you have done a certain type of work and you're changing the type of work completely from, let's say, documentation in this case, to implementation. And as it was a good waterfall project, we were also doing as a separate sequence, again, testing. And again, you could see that when you looked at testing, again, random delays were popping up. Some of the, let's say, testing work was maybe predictable in terms of timeline, but we had a particular part in our testing pipeline which was coming up again and again with problems, and it was really tough to also resolve these issues. So we were going around in circles, and it took, eventually we finished, but magnitudes later than what we thought. So we basically observed that we underestimated in some areas the complexity, and then you could say, as we were already applying sort of Agile or elements of Scrum at this point in time, that we could have sort of, again, measured the velocity, seen how things are going, etc. But we did. Problem was that we were doing this kind of Scrum in a completely waterfall mindset. So the surroundings expected certain timelines, and of course you can shift those timelines if you have good reasons, but you can't do it on a sprint by sprint basis. In former worlds, you are giving out a timeline and you keep to the timeline until a certain point in time, which is very late into the project, and then you delay it by a few years. That's how it happens, at least for German airports sometimes. But it happens for all kinds of projects, yeah. So we have the NATO, the Pentagon, we have big military projects, we have projects with the FBI, we have projects which are with the German police, the Deutsche Bundeswehr. We have these things all over the place. How the new ICE was built, this fast train in Germany. Of course, the Berlin airport, the new one, and of course, almost every IT project I see. It is just not that obvious if let's say we have a small project which is running with 4 people for a year, and then they realize that they need a half a year longer and 2 additional people. It doesn't sound much, but actually they have just doubled almost the amount of effort and the price. And of course, if that happens with a 2 billion euro project, it is a bit more obvious. The impact is slightly higher, but it happens all the time. And there is actually in this frustration where we look at these big projects, and I promise I'm coming back to Agile very soon, or I'm coming to Agile very soon, but this frustration is shared by everyone who's looking at this, that this is not happening. This is not going to happen when I do run projects. And then we find different ways to achieve that. Putting maybe much more pressure on people, not promising too much at the beginning, or choosing a different methodology. And I think this is simply my way of dealing with these things. I believe additional pressure on people makes unhealthy work-life balance. If we talk order of magnitude 2 or 3 times, not going to happen when you put pressure on people. They'll, of course, in a week, when you have a project which runs for a week and you put people under pressure, I would allow people to put themselves under pressure for a week. I think that's going to be all right. Yeah, people will need to recover after that properly, but for a week, it's possible. The projects I'm talking about are enterprise projects. They run for years, or they run for a year and then the next project comes along, and then it's not a sustainable pace. You can't do these sort of stressful working time all the time. You need proper breaks in between, or you just don't have the peaks and you just try to be more in a regular pattern where you regularly deliver, and you don't need these spikes of really big stress. So stress is not an option. I think it is unhealthy. It doesn't really help, not in the long run. For most of the projects I'm seeing, stress isn't an option because you can't keep it up for that long period. I wouldn't allow people to work like that, even if they would like to, because I would say it's unhealthy. And I'm, within the German laws, for instance, also obliged to keep people working a certain period of time only, and then this is over, And maybe one additional alluding to that working time, back in my study days, I did write a little homework around extra hours, working extra hours in the knowledge worker era. So back in the 80s, basically, there was a guy doing research, and he said, when you're looking at the efficiency, if you work 1 hour, you're doing one piece of work. If you work 2 hours, you're doing 2 pieces of work. If you work 8 hours, you're probably doing about 8 pieces of work. I think that is where it already started to degrade slightly. So if you work consistently for 8 hours, you're not necessarily as effective as if you would be just working consistently 1 hour, because of becoming tired, etc. And then if you're working 9 hours, if you're working 10 hours, you just went to 10. And in a study, you said the efficiency does decline. So you're doing maybe 9-ish pieces of work if you're working 10 hours. And if you do this for an extended period of time, you're doing actually 8, and then you start to drop, and you're back at less than 7. He did, of course, percentages and not pieces of work, but just to say, if you're working consistently over time, you're delivering less as if you're working consistently just about 8 hours. That was the summary of his studies he did there. And then that makes me believe that working over hours is actually for the bin anyway. The 8-hour day is potentially for the bin as well. So, what is the other option? Not promising too much. The problem is that, at least in my experience, people need a certain amount of trust into a team or organization or into an individual in order to let him do whatever he likes, by him saying it'll take as long as it takes. And that would be a good answer if someone asks me how long does that project take. But for whatever reason, there is always the need to define a budget, and there's always the need to define the crew of people who are available for a certain period of time, and then we start to work with these things. So we ask very carefully for how much does it take, time, money, people, and for what period of time does it take these things. And then you have to do this, and people start to sort of do other plans around those people and say, I don't know, 2 billion here, 2 billion there, this is our annual amount we can spend on the subject, so we do spend on these 2 projects for the next 3 years, and then we start with the next one, etc. So everything gets made around those figures we are giving to the management. We do these effort estimates, etc. And this is mainly the reason why, when I said earlier we were in a waterfall environment, when you are in an environment which tries to make up those plans for the next 3 years, how much money you spend on what, with the people available, etc., then at the end of the day, you will have a hard time making any changes to any of these things, because it's all in a very fixed pattern. Agile is an option to get a bit out of, is another option how to address those things properly, and I believe product development actually as well. So if you take a guy I met, he's working in science, and they are basically doing research, which might eventually lead to a development of he's working in a factory, so for a very large factory. And eventually some of their research might lead to a small innovation they can apply into the factory supply chain life cycle, how they produce goods, whatever. The budget for them is planned very simply. They have a certain amount of people which are there for until they leave the company, and this is how long the budget is being reserved. Yeah, they don't get a project, do the next innovation, have 6 months, this is how much money you spend, and then they put them into a fixed frame. Because people know that these guys have no way of telling how much time it will take until they find the next innovative bit on the production process. And this is the trust I would be talking about. Yeah? So if you do product development, it's usually you say we start with a new product, we will put 5 people on it, and that means, I don't know, roughly $500,000 plus licenses, whatever it is. Yeah, so you have a fixed sum over in a period of time in which you're spending the money. Then it requires a bit of trust normally, because when you do projects, instead you have someone a neck to hang, etc. So and this is basically the change organizations have to understand, agile or not, but that IT projects, that IT software delivery is usually a product research science thing at the very beginning, and then it's ongoing efforts over until the product dies. The more active the people are using the product, the more changes they bring, the more stable are the costs, because you still need maintenance, operational, but also further development and research work along the way, or during the lifetime of the project. And Agile is almost the starting point for this, because you are anticipating that you want no pressure on people beyond the usual pressure people make themselves, but you don't want to make them responsible for something which is impossible to foresee. You don't make a big assumption how long something takes, and you do empirical research. So actually you try to say, I don't know how long it will take, give him half a year or a quarter of a year, and then we might have a hunch. There's something which is called the cone of uncertainty, which says at the very beginning of a project, the uncertainty is really high, and the longer the project goes, the smaller the uncertainty gets, because we get more insight into our customer base, into our user base, into the complexity of the logic we are going to implement, the environment, etc., etc. So the more we are into the project, the more we know about it. And Agile methods, in particular Scrum, offer you a very nice tool to make this cone of uncertainty visible and to predict a bit better what's going to happen in the future. The other thing, so this is one of the core reasons why I want Agile methodologies to make expectation management within the team, but also towards the outside of the team, more obvious and better, firm, concrete ideas for the external and internal stakeholders around such a project, and having essentially a better, more successful experience at work, instead of trying to solve something which is unsolvable, or running a marathon but just running it 10 times. The other thing about Agile is that when we talk about sustainability, it is, and I talk about work-life balance, this may be one of the first things about humans' interactions or processes and tools, the first sentence in the Agile Manifesto. And for me, this reason is maybe that work-life balance. But often enough, if you're in a project where you have distinct phases, documentation, execution, testing, and maybe user acceptance testing, and then go live, you will also realize that there is completely broken communication channels between these groups. Because the first group has the interest to deliver their bit on time. There will be certain requirements towards the documentation phase. Say it needs to be accepted by the users, it needs to be agreed by the management. Yeah, so probably 1, 2, 3, 4 different quality gates. Of course, if you're in a specific scenario, you might say it needs to have an sort of audit which goes through, etc. Yeah, so it might be various things which are quality gates around documentation, and this is what the team will work against. Then the next team comes around and says, we are maybe also one of the quality gates. Yeah? So the execution team will have to read the document and say, we are understanding what's in there, and we're able to work against it. And this team will have a vested interest that this document is good enough, because someone will ask them, actually will have asked them up front already. And this is the problem, the overall duration of the project is already fixed before the documentation has been fully built in all its detail, but nevertheless, the next team will be asked to execute the project within a certain period of time, and based on the documentation which is delivered. So this is where the first break starts. People will fight against this documentation because it would be a miracle if that specifications these people came up with, these great consultants, would fit into the timeline of the execution phase. It is almost impossible. If it does fit, if it is also so well understood that the development team says or execution says, yes, it is possible, we are doing and we understand every line item there, and we can definitely implement it, then this is great. Doesn't happen that often, and this is why execution versus documentation party, these people will not have the greatest relationship, and they won't let every information flow. They will, the documentation party, this is the one who talks to the end user. And to the execution people, that's as far as it goes. The execution people might talk to the documentation people, and they might also talk to the testers who are coming next. And the testers again will have a certain budget timeline in which they have to produce certain documents, and they will talk to the execution people, and the execution people sometimes answer on questions the testing group might have with, I don't know, this is nothing I know about the documentation people know about it, what users, but it's nothing I'm in possession of. I was just asked to produce this bit. And here we have the next break. The purpose of a particular feature or the overall project is hard to convey if you have these silos amongst a supply chain, because this is what it is at the end of the day. It is a factory lane, it is a supply chain, it is a value stream, maybe that's a better description, and that is broken a few times in between, because we have these very clearly cut lines. The testing team will probably not have the greatest potential to actually talk to the end user, even if they do, they lack a certain amount of context, knowledge, but whatever. Also, they won't accept anything which is not up to the mark, because at the end of the day, they feel responsible for quality assurance. They know if something hits the market and it's broken, someone will say, but you have done a great job on quality assurance. So again, there is tension between execution and testing team. The user acceptance test people, if there are some will have the same issue again with the testing team. They'll never speak to the developers, they will always talk to the testers will talk to the developers. Chinese whispering goes on and on. And that makes it very much not perfect and broken. So we have a team of people, where team is the definition of saying we have a certain purpose, we share this purpose, we're maybe working all along towards the same vision and the same goal. And actually we have maybe 4 or 5 different groups of people who have quite different interests. next to any way that people have quite individual interests when they're at work, but there's not even this common element to say we as a group of people share the common goal. The testing team will share a common goal, the development team will, the documentation team will, the users will. But is there an overarching vision which people really share, really embrace, where they really work on day by day, jointly, with the vested interest to produce the best outcome at the very end? It's not. They are not aligned in their targets. You will find those setups that even the incentives, the bonus incentives are made, so the money people receive is made on individual delivery. There will be the overarching, the whole thing is on time target, but you will have gratifications to say, oh, the biggest level of influence the documentation team has is on delivering their part on time. Okay, execution team the same. So how much vested interest do they have then in delivering the whole thing on time? So this is a bit of a random bunch of reasons just coming out of my brain, but I think I didn't want to prepare it upfront because I think if I would be doing it, some of the things are coming out less natural. I think they develop. Yeah. So there's really, it is an endless amount of reasons. Humans' interactions over processes and tools is one of them. Definitely. The other three Agile manifesto sentences, but are the same. I could talk about them as long as I could talk about the first one. Maybe one loop back. We were running in organizations projects for an extended period of time, and we still tried in our project implementation for software development projects to use the same methods as we are using to build big things. And let's take houses. If you're building serious houses, usually the building company has a hunch. Everyone knows that a house takes 1 to 2 years to build, and if it's a quick one, it's less. So there is so much experience around building houses, and of course they differ, and of course they have individual constraints with a certain commodity part of the building. Builder is not available, etc. But at the end of the day, it's a completely different thing than to build a piece of software no one has ever built before, which is untouchable. Unfortunately, software is invisible until it becomes part of the screen, part of the user interface. But we have tried the same mechanics, and it didn't really work. It didn't really work greatly. And I think we have to really make a shift there to say, how can we make it work better? How can we ascertain that we have a long-term strategy how to keep people engaged in a project? How do we make their life in a company more enjoyable by having a good team atmosphere where people really share the same goal and look at the same value stream in the same way? And have a great alignment in our ways of working and how we put targets together and how we execute work, so that these things of how we think and talk and actually work on our work are just one thing, and we don't have always call them tangent forces. So you actually want to go here, but something comes from the side, and something from the side tells you, but you need to also focus on this, which is not part of the direction everyone else is going, but it is something which comes from the side and drags away. And some of these things are unavoidable, that you're getting sidetracked by a party. But as much as we can, we should try to avoid streamline these things. And that means also that you can't have a documentation execution and testing party. What you need is a T-shaped team which is fully responsible for all these phases in a project at the same time, or in a product development at the same time. There's one additional aspect to this. So once we have done this, once we have, let's say, on the working ground, aligned these things, I've spoken about how we plan our work, how we plan budgets, etc. How we put people under stress, typical manager work, putting people under pressure. So how do we, once we've changed this work, the real value stream, the surrounding needs to change as well. How we do controlling processes, how we manage teams, what kinds of management is actually required. And again, we made the assumption that often in a hierarchy that the superior has more experience than the underling, the staff member working for this manager. And in knowledge work areas, this is always never the case. You always hire people who are doing day-to-day development work. And just because you did it 10 years ago, and since 10 years you're a manager, it basically means that your experience is not worthless, not at all, because some of the mechanics are still the same, but the context the person is in is completely right now in your project is pretty unknown to you. Unless you're super close to him and micromanaging always, then you can start thinking whether you're a manager or just want to develop work again. So there is a certain amount of detachedness to the management anyway, and the more context complexity is happening in a development world where it is very high, the less typical management methodologies anyway apply. And working with fear, working with pressure, working with top-down behavior, working with the assumption that the experience you have in terms of age, or we have. I mean, I belong to these guys as well to some degree, and I will make some someday again. But these assumptions are all wrong. The people we hired are the experts, and we need to make sure that they can work as efficiently as possible. So we have to help them in this environment to have this proper cohesive group of people working against the same goal. And that means we have to really change our let's say identity. We have built up ourselves as being that manager, and that means different management styles. One of them would be research leadership, but there's what does it really mean? The pressure idea doesn't really work. And at the end of the day, also realizing that you can't motivate people, that you can't convince people if they don't want to be convinced, they don't want to be motivated. That extrinsic motivation, extrinsic practices almost never really work. Having said that, extrinsic motivation can be also structures we are building. And I think this is maybe the one influence we really have as managers, that we build structures which do incentivize or allow certain behavior and not allow or make it harder to do other behavior. I think I've scratched now a billion topics all at once, and it was a bit of a random thing. I don't know if anyone has his own opinion on why he's doing Agile. I think this series will become maybe its own series because I find it very important to get clear around the reasons why we do these Agile methodologies, why do we change from the old world. And I think if we do this, we are completely aware of our motivation as you know those people who love this, who want to introduce these methodologies if they're being introduced. So the reasons why I think it is quite helpful to understand yourself properly there in order to say, okay, does it make sense in that context? And is there reasons why you would apply certain methodology on one hand, but also when do you strive for, let's say, the Agile family? Yeah. So when do you strive for this mindset? Okay. Thanks so far. Have a nice start into this summer week here on the 4th of July, and speak to you soon. Bye.